we have in today's Gospel a hint of the power being left upon earth, that power which we have coming through the priesthood. Those who are engaged in the medical profession and any ambit to do with healthcare will be aware that there is a link between health of soul and health of body. In our time, there is a higher proportion than before of people who are suffering in their mind and in their soul. And one can see it. One can see it often if one just looks back at human behavior and human appearance. Worry written on the forehead. Behavior which only explains itself if people are profoundly unhappy. The ultimate, of course, being suicide. One cannot fix a bit of the person. It just can't be done. Many people come to the hermitage wanting a blessing. This already happened way back in Italy, exactly the same thing. And amongst ourselves in community, we were aware that it was only often handling cosmetics. One can do nothing without, in the first place, making sure that there's light and therefore peace in the depths. Otherwise, we're handling what is but the symptoms of illness. The illness must be handled. And it applies to any human being. Most people, it seems, in Western society do not really care for their ultimate well-being. And even though they do not realize it, they are their own worst enemies. They avoid the issue by distraction. Now, this is fairly recent on our planet. In simple societies, it is not yet the situation. In the period when television as yet was not contaminated, we have brilliant examples of people who are able to say things and as yet not be stoned down. One is quite amazed now, 40 years or so down the line, to be able to see how Bishop Fulton Sheen, at prime time viewing in the centre of Western modern society, was able to say things as they were and be listened to with respect by thousands, if not millions. He was before his time insofar as he knew that you had to use what was out there as a providential means and not poo-poo the whole lot, and it applies to us too. But he succeeded also because he was gifted on the human level, and that applies to us too. If we reach another soul via the bridge of our humanity, then there is a chance that we will have a one-to-one, at least, audience. The first impact is that of our humanity, which attracts rather than repels. Every encounter that we have in the course of the day is something of that. I have noticed actually in the village that sometimes one is pleasantly surprised by the way that quite a few people will take the care to make the day that much better from a moment in their company, even, for instance, in the supermarket next door nearly. There are some there who really won't let you go by without saying that extra word. It's something of Irish society which, God bless you, is still there. People will not pass you in the street without some kind of eye contact, and even if young people have it, they will say, "Hi, Father," or something. It's there, and it's not in many countries. Hang on to it and use it. It can be grace-filled as well. I would like to quote in extenso words of Bishop Fulton Sheen, which are relevant until the end of time. He succeeds, as I say, because before getting to the crunch, he's won over his audience how? Getting them on side with, e.g., humour. It works. It works every time. But listen to this message and interpret it on your own level. Christian love bears evil, but it does not tolerate it. It does penance for sins of others. But it is not broad-minded about sin. The cry for tolerance never induces it to quench its hatred of the evil philosophies that have entered into contest with the truth. It forgives the sinner and hates the sin. It is unmerciful to the error in his mind. The sinner, it will always take back into the bosom of the mystical body. But his lie will never be taken into the treasury of his wisdom. Real love involves real hatred. Whoever has lost the power of moral indignation and the urge to drive the buyers and sellers from the temples has lost a living, fervent love of truth. Charity, then, is not a mild philosophy of live and let live. It is not a species of sloppy sentiment. Charity is the infusion of the Spirit of God, which makes us love the beautiful and hate the morally ugly. We know that Pius the 12th was, despite his apparent distance of character, extremely good and kind, saving thousands upon thousands of Jews. We know that Newman, despite his apparent Oxford brick wall layer, was extremely kind to the poor. We know indeed that all the great of history in our Christian faith have uttered the word of God in kindness. But it is not a soft kindness, which brings me to where I want to land. We are confused by this underlying element of charity above all. Charity does not mean abdication. And this is what our bishops have to thrash out this week in Rome. We are not in possession of something which we can manipulate and change at will. We have the gospel in our hands. And right now, the big issue is this. We have the Lord's own word, that he who leaves his wife and marries another is committing adultery. It is not something in our own power. Charity is extremely balanced and complete. There are several issues which we have to look at in one complex question, and not just one. It is too easy to say we must be merciful, and therefore we give people a second chance. Well, what one is doing in that is actually taking the mercy away from a young girl who wants to have the assurance that she will always have on side the church who will not give her husband that mentality of ad experimentum. She wants security, and we can't see further than the tip of our toes, or rather nose. We have to be aware that what makes Catholics interesting in marriage is the fact that people marry us partly, and this has been the case all through the years, because they knew that the Catholic Church meant business when it came to vows. The question then poses itself in a different way. The vows. I have many young people coming to me because of the travelling situation who are married already at the age of 18. And unfortunately, already, very quickly afterwards, a certain proportion find they're in trouble, because quite often the man was not mature enough to know what he was undertaking. So do you see the difference? The question then is posed on this level. is there a true marriage? Because for that to happen, there has to be, on the part of those contracting, because they are the ministers, bride and bridegroom are the ministers, the capacity to contract validly in the full Catholic sense. So if there's obvious lack of capacity, then that is the problem there. So that's partly the big issue in question right now. Do we have to perhaps look at this question of unfairness with regard to people having to spend, when they can't afford it, even traveling people, huge numbers of money because it's not their fault, because some idiot has made a mistake when he was only 16 or 17. That's the problem quite often. We can't, for that just part of a huge situation, say we have to be merciful to the whole situation and change it all, because in that process we lose our identity as Catholics and as maintainers of the gospel of Christ. Now we need to pray about this this week ahead, my friends, because the media too have pressure power to make people, even in high places, say things which they're expected to say. And we know what happened when Pope Paul VI, to be beatified at the end of this synod, came out with eventually Humanae Vitae. They were expecting another answer, and of course many people weren't happy about it, and the media above all, so we're afraid of that kind of reaction happening again. We're up against it, my friends. Old Nick is in the business. He's inside, outside and all around trying to destroy our Catholic identity, and marriage is a very important part of his field of battle. I just finished. Marriage is central. If our families are not holding together, and not holding together in an ambience of faith and warmth, then I'm afraid we cannot expect other things such as vocations or even stability in future marriages. Marriage, first of all, has to be contracted under God, otherwise it's purely human, it has a human effect. And also, once in place, has to be maintained by God in the midst, which brings me back to the last point. Prayer! Where is prayer? We can't keep something together like marriage if God is not in the midst. And this means in practice that he's felt to be in the midst. The 13th of October tomorrow is the day to think about this. Remember, at that 6th apparition in Fatima, for the 6th time Our Lady asked for rosary. That means in practice rosary in the family and in communities and in the car and when we're in company of Catholic friends. That is putting God in the midst. And rosary is well said so that children know what prayer is about. There is no point in pretending that we can hand over the children to the great screen and let it do it for us. I go to good Catholic families with this gigantic screen doing the babysitting for them. We can't expect grace to get through to that noisy atmosphere. Prayer has to reign over the box. So I finish, my friends. When we are on earth, we have the choice between creating in our family, in some sense, an anticipation of heaven, or in another, we can, if we just switch off, leave it to an evil presence. Because just to have the presence of swear words palpitated at us through the box is to abdicate over the atmosphere in the house. Be careful what your children hear. Be careful what they hear from you. Be careful what the angels hear around you even when you're alone. Let our whole life be in some way bathed in an angelic atmosphere. For we are on earth only a short time, and there is a continuity immediately after death. We go from peace to peace, or from absence of peace to absence of peace in the beyond.